If you can just give me a couple minutes of your time, I can teach you how to get more done in one day than most people get done in a week. In this video, I'm going to break down how you can do that in 5 easy steps. A lot of people often may tell you to just do it. And obviously, contrary to what Nike would like you to believe, it's often not as simple as that. I'm going to break down how you can maximize your productivity without completely burning out.
Now you might be wondering, why should I even listen to you? To give you some context about me, I was top 6% of my class and automatically admitted to the University of Texas at Austin and was admitted into the Honors College as well. I gained acceptances from universities such as Cornell, the University of Michigan, as well as a BSMD program, which allowed me automatic acceptance into their undergrad and medical school program. I'd like to think that I was one of the most productive students in my cohort and always managed to get assignments done before some people had even started them. And so now let me break down how you can maximize your productivity too.
Step 1. Keep track of deadlines. This doesn't just mean writing it down on your calendar. The key to this step that not a lot of people may tell you is that you want to actually note this deadline on your calendar a few days earlier in advance than when it's actually due. You can consider this as your personal deadline. That way, in your brain, you will subconsciously realize,
okay, this is something that I need to get done.
It will be on your calendar, and although it's actually earlier than the day that you have to have it due, that day is the day that you're going to prioritize, that you are going to work towards, that you are going to schedule for to make sure that you get what you need to get done on that specific day, so that even if for some reason you start to lag behind or certain things come up, you'll still have that deadline planned several days in advance. So even if you do require a little bit more time, you'll still have that buffer space, and that can prevent you from, burning out too quickly or not being able to meet a deadline. I also recommend you adding small little milestones for yourself before that deadline.
I'm going to complete this first part of the project by this day and second part in a week.
Depending on how much time you have before you have to actually accomplish that goal. But I do suggest that you have an idea of how to allocate your time effectively so that you're able to actually complete the task during the time span that you were given and do not feel rushed. Often I think it's helpful to break down these big, huge tasks into smaller, more digestible snippets and pieces so that you're not having to kind of cram everything all into one night, although sometimes that may be effective for certain people, but I would prefer not to put myself in that situation. So that's why I typically like to get little parts done slowly and progressively so that by the time the deadline actually reaches, I will have finished the project way in advance. And that is better not only for your mental health but also for your physical health, so that you're not having to pull all-nighters. The second thing that I highly recommend you do is write your to-do list the day before. At night, I don't know about you guys, but for me personally, in the evening, especially when it gets closer to bedtime, my brain will start to slowly but progressively slow down, and that's probably a good thing because that kind of shows you that the melatonin is slowly but surely seeping into your brain and making you want to sleep. And so during this time where your brain may not be at fully optimal functioning power and you're kind of like at a more relaxed kind of situation where you don't have as much brain power as you may have in other periods of the day, then this is the perfect time to do something, a task that is maybe not as mentally taxing but can really help improve your productivity overall in the grand scheme of things, and that is writing your to-do list. By writing your to-do list in the evening, the next day that when you wake up, you'll have a list of tasks that are clear and written out that you can immediately start acting upon rather than having to spend time to think about,
oh, what do I actually need to accomplish today?
Right? Because it's so much easier if the minute that you wake up, you already have a list of tasks that you need to do outlined in front of you so that you can go ahead and start ticking them off one by one rather than starting to become stressed and overwhelmed because you don't really know what's next, and then you're wasting half your morning trying to figure out what you need to do, what you need to prioritize. And so that's another thing, is when you write your to-do list, I do recommend that you organize it in a way that kind of illustrates the order in which you should complete them. And that actually ties into step 3, which is swallow the frog first. And I'm sure you've heard this time and time again, but essentially you want to make sure that you're completing the relatively harder task beforehand. That way you kind of feel like, okay, yes, I've gotten the hardest thing out of the way, I've accomplished a lot, and then that makes the next maybe easier or less difficult task more manageable because you know that you've already gotten and completed the most difficult part of the day when you have the most energy. And obviously everyone's energy levels are going to depend. Some people are going to be more productive in the morning, some in the afternoon, some even in the evening. But I definitely do suggest that you try to get the more difficult, more mentally taxing task out of the way when you are at most optimal productivity, which tends to be earlier in the day for most people. But obviously, that if that's not you and you're kind of like a night owl kind of person, then you might want to complete the more difficult task when your mind is most fresh and functioning. But obviously I feel like a lot of people, they might say, okay,
I'm a night owl. I get more work done in the evening.
but a lot of the time that's actually because they're just putting it off and they have no choice but to do it in the evening, because earlier in the day they were kind of procrastinating and just didn't have time or the energy. But in reality, because the way our body is functioning, the circadian rhythms, in the evening it's hard for me to believe that you're really and truly going to be more productive than you are earlier in the day. Regardless, just make sure that you try to complete the hardest task first, because I promise once you get the hardest task out of the way, it will make things so much easier to put things into perspective. Before, when I was studying at Peking University and I was learning linear algebra, I would always do the linear algebra problems first and do that learning before I completed anything else, because I knew that would take away a lot of my brain power, but I also needed a lot of brain power to complete that. And so by doing that first, it made the task later on actually appear easier, and I would also be able to actually get more done because I would have gotten the most stressful and annoying part out of the way. And fourth is setting timers while you're working. I'm sure that most of you have already heard about the Pomodoro timers. There's like 25-minute intervals, ones 30-minute, I think, and an hour, 2 hours. The amount of time that you're actually setting for your timers is actually going to largely depend on your, focus, attention span, ability to concentrate for certain periods of time. But, in a day, there are really only 24 hours. And if we can maximize the amount of productivity that we're engaging in during the time that we're getting our work done, then that's going to, substantially increase the amount of things that we actually get done in those 24 hours. And so in order to do that, one thing I think is extremely helpful is to set up some sort of timer. For me personally, I like to set like an hour or maybe even 2-hour timer. So during those 1 to 2 hours in that block, I am fully focused on the work that I'm doing. I will not check my notifications. I will not just do random things or be on my phone. I will solely be focused on the thing that I'm doing and do my best to really kind of absorb the information within that time frame. And by being extremely productive during the time that I'm allocating towards completing a task, that allows me to make sure that, during the times that I am not working, I feel like I already have completed the things that I need to do, and I was very productive during that time period. I know that 1 to 2 hours may seem intimidating, so obviously you can start off with smaller increments, such as like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes even, just whatever feels comfortable at first. Of course, taking your break in between each session to make sure that your mind is fresh and able to function properly during that period. I think one of the biggest traps that we fall into is telling ourselves,
Okay, I'm studying for 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours.
but in reality, within that time frame, a large majority of the time is spent either, being distracted by the notifications, because, in this day and age, there's so many types of social media platforms or messages even from other people that might kind of draw your attention away from what you're actually supposed to be doing, as well as, kind of just scrolling on your phone or telling yourself that you're absorbing the information when really you're just passively looking at the information. And so the key is we want to make sure that we're actively engaging in the project that we're enacting upon, that we're trying to accomplish, so that we can complete tasks in a time effective manner. And that is so crucial. But then finally, one thing that I do want to get back to is making sure that we have enough time to rest, because resting and relaxing is underrated, honestly, because I feel like if you don't have enough time to relax, then again, you're not going to be as productive during the times that you are meant to, complete tasks and get things done. So I think that, taking a step back and realizing, yes, I do need to get things done. Yes, I only have 24 hours, but it's impossible to spend the entire time being at maximal productivity. And oftentimes, even a 5-minute break or chatting with a friend, having lunch, just reading a book even for 20 minutes, it doesn't have to be long, will just kind of help your brain reset and return to that optimal functioning situation that allows you to get as much things done as possible in a little amount of time. The reason why we want to be productive, why we want to get things done at a more efficient pace, is because we want to have more time for things that we actually enjoy. So I don't think that you should sacrifice the things that you enjoy and your mental health and relaxation to get things done, because then that kind of defeats the purpose, right? That's why this last one is probably arguably the most important, and I really hope that you guys kind of try to implement this into your daily life. I really hope that these tips that I mentioned will be helpful in helping you get more done in one day that most people can in a month, because I promise if you implement these into your daily routines, you will definitely see your efficiency increase drastically. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing, and I'll see you guys in the next one. If you're enjoying this video so far, please consider giving it a like,